Andrea Nahles, the head of the Social Democrats in Germany, has stepped down, and we are now seeing and witnessing a fight for the chair of the party in her wake. But she did not just step down for the fun of it. The party is plummeting in the polls. They are now at about 15%. And that is a trend that is echoed all across the continent and also in America. So I wanted to talk about the general decline of the Social Democrats. And before I do that, I maybe have to first say what I do mean with the Social Democrats, because as it appears, the left is doing fine. They are basically controlling everything right now, the media, the universities, and so forth. But who are the Social Democrats? Where have they gone, and who are they? As I define the Social Democrats, and I think you will probably resonate with that explanation in a minute, they are those who care for the basic needs and for the real wishes of those who work blue-collar jobs and those who have temporarily fallen out of workforce but are interested in getting back into the workforce. So the Social Democrats are those who are hands down and try to advance their voting base, which were your common average man, and try to help them with good programs and good ideas, projects. I would give an example for that. There is a policy in Germany that was introduced under Helmut Schmidt, the education expansion, which meant that they offered evening classes so that more people could get the proto degree Abitur, which is necessary to enter universities. These extra classes are a very good idea. Now we have too much expansion, basically, because the universities do not offer quality anymore. But these courses in themselves are a good idea, and this reflects on what the voting base of the Social Democrats had always been. Those people who want to step up a bit, the smart people who are working blue-collar jobs and want to move on to work, who want to do work that is even more helpful to the wider community, want to learn the skills necessary to help better everybody around them. So that was the base, those people who wanted to rise up in society, who are hard workers or who are out of work and want to get back into it. They are coming from a weaker economic region and may seek some way or another to make it still. That was their base, and they are the ones who are neglected now. So I'm not just talking about Europe. The Social Democrats are basically a streak within the left that is also represented in the Democratic Party, or used to be, and it is represented in all European countries, and I guess all across the Western world, in Australia and New Zealand and so forth. But as the policy ideas for these groups have dried up, the voting base itself has gone somewhere else, and as the Trump electoral run shows, a lot of these people who vote for him are actually the voting base of the Democrats, or they used to be. And they are those who are not Marxists, who do not care about ideology, who just wanted, the state not to leave them alone. That is how Ann Coulter actually phrased it quite nicely. They were Christians, they were Jews, they were religious people. Some are black, some are Muslim. Right now, due to the propaganda, the Muslims and the blacks are still voting largely for the left, but at this point in time, Social Democrats have basically moved to the conservative side. You see that all across the Western world. Also, AfD is largely composed of people who voted the Social Democrats before that. But what happened to them? After 1968, when there were a lot of student protests against the Vietnam War, a lot of groups formed that were not happy with the Social Democratic Party and not with America. They were the anti-imperialists, those who were actually into Marxism, people who played down communism and Stalinism. They were led by French intellectuals, most notably Jean-Paul Sartre, who was, I believe, the last one to actually admit that Stalin was a terrible dictator. Woodstock, anti-Vietnam War movement, they tried to take over the social democratic parties everywhere. In Germany, they formed groups called the K-Groups, that stands for communist groups. And after they understood that extra parliamentarian work, the APO as they called it, is an acronym standing for extra parliamentarian opposition. When they understood that working outside the parliament alone does not work, even though now we see the parliament being driven by forces outside of it, like the media, the NGOs, etc. Once they understood that this is not good enough, they formed parties, or they went into the Social Democratic Party. Of all the new created parties, one was particularly successful, and that was the Green Party, that just picked up that environmentalism that, has a good-natured soul in it, and it just transformed the whole movement into something very, very oppressive. All little hairs in the soup require that you basically have to stop breathing, and the guilt is just placed on mankind itself. And if you want to do something, you have to act now in panic and change your life rapidly. And this was to take control over the government in the long run. And the second party that was infected, or was mostly infected, was the Social Democrats, the main party. And you see that occurring everywhere in Great Britain and also in America right now. People who were actually outside that hands down approach, like Bernie Sanders, who used to be an independent because he was up for a revolution, for bloodshed, for taking power and oppressing everybody else, who was on a holiday in the Soviet Union, praised Cuba, etc., etc. He he was so outside that until very shortly before his run for presidency, he was not even a member of the party. Likewise, Jeremy Corbyn talks about socialism again, and people in the Social Democratic Party in Germany do as well. The official party platform, which is always overrated in Germany, nobody reads it. It says the party is actually striving for a democratic socialism. That has been the case for a long time, but it used to be a dead letter a section within that script. Nobody cared, nobody even read it. I think most members, including the leadership, did not read the party program. So that played no role at all. But now, pushed by the media, the socialists are taking control over the party, and they are represented by a by the youth wing of the Social Democrats, the youth organization. The head of it is a homosexual socialist, Kevin Kühnert, and he is hyped in the media and sometimes criticized and given too much attention because of every nonsense that he is spewing. He openly advocates the expropriation of car manufacturers, for example, which is ludicrous. And more people who work for car manufacturers, and that is a lot here in this country, particularly the suppliers of the big corporations that are less known, they feel there is something dawning that does not look good at all, and that looks like their employers may be taken over by the state or some other socialist force, and then become unprofitable until they have to be cut out, like the coal mines when Maggie Thatcher took over. once it's broken, there's no way to rescue it. That was also the experience of East Germans after the fall of the wall, that many of their organizations actually had to go because they were so unprofitable. And what also ever more people on the ground, the traditional voters of the Social Democrats, realize is that these vague totems, these phrases that are used to distract people from the actual problems that politicians could actually solve if they cared about those who vote for them, that these are just really the distractions that they are. There is no such thing as capitalism. It has always been the phrase, the label attached to everything Karl Marx did not like, and it is very loosely applied to everything that is not the direct consequence, or that cannot be directly attributed as a consequence of leftist policies. If you do not pay a lot of attention, often it does. But capitalism is just everything you dislike. Waking up Monday morning, you hate it. Being sick and have no good health insurance, you hate it, and so on. So that's capitalism. Capitalism is whatever you hate. And patriarchy is whatever you hate when you are a woman. And imperialism is whatever you hate when you are not an American. So these fuzzy terms do not explain the real problems. They are making people dumber. That's pseudo-abstractism. I just make this word up to give some notion to it. Sometimes we can only think in new words when we have a concept and we have no better way to explain it. There is this extreme level of abstraction that does not help anymore. And as I fear that we as a culture plummet back into the medieval times, I will make a reference so that you can connect the dots. Back in the Middle Ages, people believed that greed, glutton, and other so-called death sins or cardinal sins cause all problems in the world. Of course, yes, whenever you see a problem, some guy will be greedy, some guy will be gluttonous, some guy will be deceptive, whatever. Yes, that is always true, because we are humans. They are basic instincts and basic behaviors of most human beings. And if you identify those as the problem, then you wind up just finding an explanation for everything that is already the explanation for something else. But being so vague, so abstract, you can no longer find a solution. That's like saying, to fight bad, you must do good. You say, yes, of course, that applies to everything, but it's so abstract that it doesn't help you anymore. Hyper-abstractism, maybe? Maybe you will come up with a better word than I can. But that is the main problem, and the left had used this concept for a long time, and if you question that, they sneered and said, well, you're not intellectual enough to cross this capitalism thing, you have to read the entire work of Karl Marx, and if your specific problem does bother you, it is because you do not understand the bigger picture, and that bigger picture is something that seems to apply to everything. They present their shallowness as being intellectually superior, because abstraction usually helps you to find more applicable solutions for many more cases if you do that correctly, and if the task you are working on is still well enough defined. In mathematics, for example, you reach from level to level of abstraction until you discuss the concept of computability. That is very different from some number crunching. So abstraction is usually a good thing, and we associate abstraction with something intellectual. But if the abstraction in itself is faulty, and and you do not even try to find a new idea with that abstraction, then it's pointless, it's meaningless, basically. And then there is the last reason why Social Democrats are losing ground. That is that after they have called everybody stupid who does not follow them into their hyper abstraction nonsense, this phantom totems like capitalism, patriarchy, imperialism, and so on, they have become so arrogant that they do not want to listen to your specific problem anymore. So if you say, I want less immigration, they will immediately say that what you actually want is more government handouts, more money for this, more projects for that. They immediately say that your actual solutions that you want is what they offer anyway. They cannot adapt anymore to your wishes, which you express verbally and directly, because they have become so self-absorbed and so snobbish that they can only sell the same stuff ever again and frown upon you. Another problem is that they have a pseudo explanation for that distance between what people actually say and what they mean. And that is the materialism of Karl Marx. Karl Marx claimed that whatever people say they want does not matter. You can solve every problem by throwing money on it. So, for example, if people become criminals, that's because they are poor. If people want to leave their homes, that's because you do not give enough foreign aid, etc., etc. So Karl Marx has offered the solution that redistribution and shelling out money into this corner or into that corner is always the solution. No matter what you say, no matter how specific you are about what you want. And left-wing parties are so, at least on the leadership level, they are so entrenched in their ideology that they can no longer listen to what you actually say. And that is the very core of it all. They are unable to just accept that your words mean what they mean. So I believe that is the main reason for its decline, or for the decline of the Social Democrats, because there's now a new force coming up in these parties that is much more dire than anything I've seen so far. That looks very totalitarian, looks like it can take us into new eons of fanaticism and tyranny. The left, I'm afraid, is doing well, but the Social Democrats are left behind. They are lost, and they mostly go to conservative groups right now. And that traditional parties are depleting. That was it for today, and I'll see you soon. Bye.